week 12 of the fantasy football season, and here's a few wide receivers I look to get on the wire this week. The first guy, Demarcus Robinson of the Baltimore Ravens. So the Ravens obviously have a problem in the passing game, and once again, Devin Duvernay, he didn't do anything in that one. And Demarcus Robinson, he was the main man over there for Baltimore versus the Panthers in week 11. 9 targets, 9 catches, 128 yards. So Robinson, a few weeks ago, I mentioned in one of my videos last week, he was just a guy that Lamar just missed on a few plays in week 9 in New Orleans. Obviously, the stat sheet didn't tell that, but he missed him on 2 targets in the end zone in that one. 1 catch, 12 yards on 4 targets. And then the big workload in week 11 versus the Panthers. 9 catches, 128 yards on 9 targets. So right now, available 96% of fantasy leagues. He's definitely a wide receiver that should be atop of the board for owners to go out there and get in Robinson. And it's just on volume. Not that he's a great wide receiver or anything, but a guy that obviously Lamar likes, a deep ball threat as well, and a guy to get this week. The next wide receiver is Treylon Burks of the Tennessee Titans. So Burks had his coming out party on Thursday Night Football versus a pretty solid Green Bay Packer defense, and he went over 100 yards for 7 catches, 111 yards in that one. In week 11 was Treylon Burks. So coming off injury a few weeks ago where he missed multiple weeks, 4 or 5 weeks was Burks. He's finally getting things going. Week 10 versus Denver, 3 catches, 24 yards on 6 targets. And then, like I said, in week 11 in Green Bay, in that one, the 7 for 111. So right here, decent matchup week 12 versus Cincinnati. We saw George Pickens have a decent ball game with 18 fantasy points in PPR leagues versus them. And this is a ball game that could be tight and contested between these teams here, where Treylon Burks might have to make a deep few plays, and him and Tannehill had good rapport in that one where they could work off it versus Cincinnati. Obviously, their secondary banged up as well with Awuzie out for the season. So right here, Burks available in 80% of fantasy leagues, and the receiver to get this week, the next guy, Donovan People-Jones of the Cleveland Browns. So People-Jones, week in and week out, he just goes out there and he puts up fantasy points. And now with Deshaun Watson coming back in week 13 here, this is a guy to go out there and get, and he's still surprisingly available right now in 56% of fantasy leagues. So People-Jones, double-digit fantasy points in PPR leagues, 5 games in a row. So the last few games here for him, week 8 versus the Bengals, 4 catches, 81 yards. Week 10 at Miami, 5 catches, 99 yards. And week 11 at Buffalo, believe it or not, his first touchdown of the season, 5 catches, 61 yards, and a touchdown. So right here, week 12, pretty stiff matchup versus Tampa Bay. But I think People-Jones, he's a guy locked in at that number 2 wide receiver spot, obviously, for this Cleveland Brown team. Amari Cooper's been a solid number 1. And with Deshaun Watson coming back, like I said, in week 13 here, it's sky's the limit because Watson could stretch the field, and People-Jones, definitely a deep ball threat. The next wide receiver is Darius Slayton of the New York Giants. So right now, it looks like he's going to be the number 1 guy and a mainstay for the remainder of the season. With Wild Dog Robinson possibly a serious injury the Giants are fearing he's going to have. So Odell Beckham, I know, is coming in for a visit with the Cowboys and the Giants after Thanksgiving. And we'll see where he goes. Obviously, if Beckham goes to the Giants, he'll be the number 1 guy there once he's up to snuff with the playbook. But either way, Slayton's going to see the field. And he's a Daniel Jones favorite over the last month of the season. Week 7 at Jacksonville, 3 catches, 58 yards, a touchdown. Week 8 at Seattle, 5 catches, 66 yards. Week 10 versus Houston, 3 catches, 95 yards, and found the end zone. And week 11, 10 targets in that one, 5 catches, 86 yards versus Detroit. So week 12 here, Thanksgiving ball game at Dallas. You know it's going to be a big ball game. Both teams at top of the division behind the Eagles, who are 9-1, and the Cowboys and Giants 7-3 so far. So right here, Slayton, I think he can make a few plays in this one. And like I mentioned, right now this Giant receiving core is pretty much down to Slayton, a banged up Kenny Golladay, obviously, and a Richie James Jr. who found the end zone. So right now available in 49% of fantasy leagues. And it's going to have a bigger role with Robinson out here possibly as Slayton, even though he's got a big role already. He's a receiver that should be owned in all 10-team leagues or deeper. And the 5th and final wide receiver I look to get on the wire this week's Paris Campbell of the Indianapolis Colts. So right here, him and Matt Ryan have a good rapport. 6 or more targets over the last 4 starts for Matt Ryan for Campbell. In the last 2 weeks since he's been back in the lineup is Ryan. Week 10 at the Raiders, 7 catches, 76 yards, a touchdown on 9 targets. Week 11 versus Philly, 5 catches, 67 yards. And week 12 coming up here. Great matchup versus the Steelers that give up the second most fantasy points to wide receivers on the season. And right here, we just saw a big ball game from T. Higgins go over 100 yards versus the Steelers. So right now, surprisingly, still available in 60% of fantasy leagues. I definitely give Campbell an ad this week. So that's a few wide receivers I look to get off the wire here for week 12 of the fantasy football season.